bits and bobs of housekeeping, but I will start with Bettina again. Can you tell us a bit more about you, what you're up to, where you're from, and everything we need to know?
Yes, of course. My name is Bettina Campolucci Bordi. I'm a plant-based chef and a cookbook author, and I also do social media and work with brands. My Instagram handle is Bettina's Kitchen, and I also run a blog called Bettina's Kitchen. I am really excited to be here today.
Awesome. What about yourself, Amy?
So I'm Amy. I'm from Nourishing Amy on Instagram and my website, where I share plant-based recipes. So I'm a recipe developer, content creator, food photographer, and luckily work with quite a few brands, which is really exciting. And it's something I'm really passionate about. So yeah, really excited to talk about that today.
Excellent. Last but not least, Kelsey, hello.
Hi everyone, thanks for listening in. I often say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I am a graphic designer turned content creator. I've got a few different Instagram and social accounts, including my main account, which is a travel and kind of London what to do page, which is Kelsey in London. And then I've also got Nutteria's account, Home of Kelsey. I also run a community called Creative Girl Gang, which I'm sure a lot of you are members of already. So yeah, I'm really excited for this evening's chat.
Thank you so much. And just quite quick context, my name is Fab. Hi everyone, I'm the founder of Creative Impact, and wickedly today we're running this chat all together to kind of talk about really what we want to know when it comes to land our dream collaborations. Just as a little reminder, guys, the lovely Chanel from Creative Impact is popping some links in the chat for you. A little tip off as we're kicking off. If you want to share a bit more about yourselves, it's always lovely. Make sure that in the chat you are writing to both the panelists and the attendees. We love reading about you guys, Anisha. We love to read about everyone else, like obviously Sarah, Marsha, but the other fellow attendees cannot see you unless you click on panelists and attendees. Kelsey also reminded us again, if you have any questions at any point, please click on the Q&A box that you can see on your screen, and there you can pop any question for the ladies at any given time. We will be able to see them and then answer them in the answering question as well, which is quite helpful. So once again, I see somebody already popping in, so excellent. Keep doing that. And finally, I will be here to ask the questions and moderate and also keep an eye on the chat. However, as I said, I'm still just waiting for another panelist in case she pops in. So I will crack on for now with the first question for our ladies. Let's get started with the first one, which is actually, to me, quite an interesting one. And we're starting with Kelsey now, just going back the other way. And when it comes to, landing dream collaborations and working with people, for yourselves, guys, how do you find the contacts for brands that you like to work with? Do you have a system? Do you have a way for you to kind of track communication in any way, shape, or form? Let us know. We're going to start with Kelsey, and I'll leave you to it.
Oh, amazing. I just see Nicole has joined. Hey, Nicole. Yay.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry, Nicole. Can we give a little heart for Nicole in the chat? Hello. Yay. Awesome. Kelsey, can I let Nicole introduce herself? Bless. We got yay.
Hi, my name's Nicole Ocran. I am a fashion influencer, content creator. I also host a podcast called Mixed Up, and I am one of the co-founders of the Creator Union.
Yay, thank you so much. And it always happens, there's always an issue or one, but I'm just happy to have you here, Nicole. Thank you so much. Nicole, just to reiterate, we were asking Kelsey and everybody about how they find and track, obviously, contacts and people when they want to work with them. So we'll let Kelsey jump back on that one, but I'm glad to have you and I'm glad we managed to get it sorted.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to join. I realized you're under my name for some reason, so identity theft is not a joke, but actually check out Nicole's Instagram, everyone. Yeah, in terms of getting contacts for brands, there's a few ways to go about this, but one of the best ways I find is when you actually feature a brand organically. That seems to work best for me. So whether that's like tagging them in an Instagram post or mentioning it on my blog, I feel like that's the best way to actually open up those lines of communication. And that's for me what's had led to the most paid brand collaborations. So often, like when you do tag a brand in your story, they should be able to see that mention, and that's kind of the perfect opportunity to send them a DM and then ask for a contact email. I find that works really well. You can just say, you know, hi, I'd love to work with you. And they can always see the kind of previous mentions that you've had of them. Ask for their best contact email for PR and marketing. Otherwise, you can also stalk their website. Usually most brands have a PR marketing landing page. LinkedIn is also another great place to find emails too.
Absolutely love that. And I love that you mentioned about organically actually, spotlighting people that you love, also because it shows that you know what they're about and you actually know what you love about them already, and it gives them the extra level of confidence, which I think is really important. So that's a great tip. Thank you for starting us off with that. I'm going to jump now on Nicole. Nicole, what about yourself? What are some of the ways that you go about this?
Yeah, I mean, like Kelsey said, I mean, organic is always the best way. I think if you are thinking of doing something cold, or perhaps you've seen other influencers or content creators working with a brand that you think, oh, I wish I was working with them, or I'd like to work with them. I find that using that moment of obviously knowing that they at least pay content creators is a really good way to, it's a really good in. And usually in my pitches to them, I talk about, again, the ways in which that brand or that item, for example, can fit in really seamlessly. If I have screenshots as well of like the types of conversations I have with people about said brand, or it could be something that may be similar, again, and see how it fits in well with my life, and again use that as examples of just as a way to show people, show the brands like, oh, this is stuff that people want to see, and these are the things that people are asking me about. That's always worked really well for me.
I genuinely love that. And I want you guys to understand there's a lot of proactiveness, and it really helps because it makes you feel comfortable, confident, but also helps with that element of professionalism. And I cannot stress this enough. The first contact and connection you're going to have with anyone that you want to work with, it's so important because it sets the example for everything else that you're going to be doing. And I think it's so key. Now I'm going to jump on Bettina, and I know that you also work with different people and there are different types of partnerships as well. So I'm really interested to see how you go about being proactive, or maybe how do you go with what the context that you receive when it comes to other people inquiring as well?
Absolutely. I think sort of in the last year or so, it's all been virtual. So like everyone else said, DMs directly with the brands to find out who represents the brand. I also find that it's really useful to have a good relationship with PRs that represent the brand. So once you have been in touch with a PR company, to keep that relationship alive by checking in and just saying hi and being nice. And pre-lockdown and pre-pandemic, it's a really good idea to go to festivals because very often those brands will be there representing themselves, and it's a great opportunity to meet people face to face and connect with brands directly. And hopefully we'll be able to do that again. But otherwise, on a virtual level, DMs are great, and finding the right people to connect with.
Oh my God, I love that. I think it's very important. I think, I don't know if you agree, but it shows also that you put that interest into actually understanding who's the right person, so you can really target whoever needs to be having that conversation with. It is a small touch, but it makes a massive difference. Just asking, who should I talk to? Who's the best person? Can you direct me to them? Like little things that make a difference. Amy, last but not least, what about you? What is some of your experiences?
I agree with everything everyone said, especially I think we forget about in real life events, but they're such a great place to meet people. You'd go over, you'd try the chocolate or whatever it is, and then say, oh, this is great. And they always ask what you do. And then it's just a great way of saying, actually, I think we could do something really good together. So always just kind of being really honest about who you are, what you want to do with them. Yeah, I think it's a great way, but obviously we're all kind of online at the moment. And so yeah, Instagram messaging is great, and naturally just tagging them, and just work with brands that you genuinely love. There's nothing worse than trying to fit something that's something into your grid or into your feed that's just not going to work. And I just think you can see people's passions. So just go for brands that you really love, rather than the ones that you think you might like, just ones that genuinely you can connect with, I think is the best way, because brands will see that as well. And then, like Bettina said, PR agencies are great, because you'll often work with them through one company and then they might approach you in a couple months' time, and with a different company. So that's always good. And a final thing is nurturing the kind of relationships when they just send you gifts. I'm always really appreciative, and I'll always send a follow-up email to say thank you so much, like I'm really loving it, I made this the other day with it. And I've had then quite a few come back a few months later, even a year later, then offering the same thing but for a paid work or a paid kind of collaboration. So just really nurturing relationships, I think, is key.
And I think sometimes we forget about that, and it's understandable. You're always looking for the next person to talk to or another brand that you could connect with. But this is a great reminder just to finish off this point, which is we need to remember that the people that we already have contacts with, the relationship they already have built, are going to have a lot of power when it comes with, going forward. Anything that is paid or not paid is still an opportunity to then open up a conversation. And even if somebody's not ready just yet, that reminder might actually take them off that fence for the first time in a long time. Most relationships from a sales perspective, which is something that I've been doing as my background, and marketing, can take up to 6 months to develop into something bigger. So, perseverance is key. And I love that you mentioned that as that nurturing relationship. Now, still in this kind of camp, we're going to probably start with Amy, just to kind of go back as we did last time. Let's look at the pitching element itself. What would be the number one tip that you would mention when pitching yourself to a brand, or even number one tip when you respond to a pitch from a brand? What comes up for you, ladies? Starting off again with Amy first.
I guess it will depend on the brand that you're speaking to and what they're looking for. But if I respond to someone on Instagram, for example, I'll always make it very clear that I'm interested in this as a paid collaboration, for example. And I'll always say something really truthful but complimentary about the brand, like say, I really love this because I naturally use it for such and such, to just show that you're genuinely really keen rather than just looking for a paid job. I think that really kind of speaks volumes and is quite noticeable. And just say, I'm really happy to chat more about this. I always try and move things over to email once I've kind of got the initial conversation going on Instagram, move all kind of money and business over to email and just say, I just think it's more professional, it doesn't get lost in your DMs. And then just say, really happy to chat about rates, let me know the best email to contact you on, and just make it really snappy and quick, which is difficult because I'm quite wordy when I write, but just sound really keen, and just get their email address. And I think that's it off the top of my head.
Those are great starting points. I love that. Thank you so much. All right, then we have so many things to think about, but what else is coming up? Bettina, what about yourself? Anything that really works for you? Thou shalt unmute yourself, my dear.
There we go.
Has happened at least once. If not, we're not happy.
I think it's really important. I find that it's quite good to get people on the phone, or as we're in the Zoom-tastic world now that we're living in, to get people on Zoom and chatting, because I think it's great to have that initial Zoom conversation and then move things over on email. I find, just because you can be quite flexible when you talk face to face. And I find that if you send sort of your price list straight away, then there's no room for discussion or flexibility, because I find that if it's a brand that doesn't have a lot of budget, but I really love them, then I'm willing to be flexible. And it's just a great way of talking about things and also chatting about different ways of working together, because I don't think it's not always straightforward, is it? And there's different types of collaborations that can be done. So my tip would be, try and get them on the phone or on Zoom first, if you can, and then follow up with an email. If that's not possible, then try and explain as much as possible in an email and give options, and also make sure that you mention that you are flexible.
I really love that, because not a lot of people talk about it, but I know you, Gal, and I knew you were going to bring this up because it's actually really important to remember that we need to think about when can we add that room for negotiation. As you say, if you love somebody or a brand and you want to do that, and that's why I also, it's just a journey that you're going to take the brand, and if you do it that way, you actually open yourself to understand where you want to meet them halfway. You will know, I think, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes you're just happy to say this is kind of what I do. But when you're really passionate about a brand, again, it just takes that extra step. It means that at least you can nurture that relationship first, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And, brands sometimes are at a starting point and you don't know where they're going to end up. And if you sort of nurture that relationship right from the get-go, you will probably be the person that they will come back to when they can pay more as well. And it's a great starting point to nurture relationships. I can't stress enough persistence and keeping in touch with people is really, really important.
Thank you so much. And before I jump on to Nicole next, I also want to say, just on a note from us, we've been, I guess, working, supporting each other with Bettina, obviously, in Creative Impact since we were 5 brands ago, pretty much. And obviously, it's a different type of collaboration, but it shows that, just like a fellow blogger or creative will think about you if there's something relevant to you, the same would happen with a brand. You will think about that and then will think about you, and you can find those connections, and it just makes it so much more organic. And and also want to say it saves you time because you're not constantly chasing things and chasing new people. So thank you so much for mentioning that again. Nicole, what about yourself? What came up for you when it comes to pitching yourself to brands or brands coming to you?
Sorry, I was like, I'm making that same mistake. Classic 2021 mistakes. But yeah, I think kind of off the back of, what Bettina was just saying, it's following up is so important. And I would definitely recommend putting stuff in your calendars, as a reminder to yourself, depending on how you track how you've pitched, who you've pitched to and when. I have like a Google sheet of my contacts, and again, like I keep dates. I make notes about what we've talked about and how I can follow up in the future. I'll put it again in my Google Calendar on when to follow up, especially when someone says to me, oh, there's nothing, we're not really working on anything right now. Obviously, right now is a great time because we've got these in the UK, we've got like key government dates of like when things will be open. So depending on what your niche is and the types of things that you talk about as a creator, it's a good time to start getting those plans in place for pitches around things like travel, for example, or other areas where you might want to focus on. So those are some things for me that I do. I mean, like everyone else is saying, it's so important to nurture, not only it's so important to nurture the relationships that you already have, because that's where, if they've paid you before, for example, they're more likely to pay you again. Or if you've worked with them before, they've sent you some PR products, that's again a great resource to tap into. And people move around all the time, so making sure that those relationships are kept warm is always a good shout. But yeah, I mean, in terms of organization, I keep organized that way. I always try to be really personable, and have like some sort of personal connection with the brand or something that I want to share with my audience. So like I mentioned before, like giving examples of what that is, why I feel like I'm best placed to talk about the product, what people trust me to talk about, what people have told me they want to hear more from me about, and sharing those examples. Again, I think when you come armed with data and you come armed with, even it doesn't even have to be it doesn't even have to be numbers, but even screenshots from your audience is super helpful. That's me.
Thank you, and you give us so many pointers. To be honest, I got stuck on the excitement of actually you tracking things so much, even writing the dates. To me, that is gold, like a Virgo that just it burst. Like literally, like, yes. And I asked people in the chat to give me a little yes. We got a yes for Oscar already. If you do use spreadsheets or anything to actually keep track of your conversations, so a little yes, because I think it's so important. Now, last but not least, Kelsey, what about yourself? What comes up to you when it comes to the art, shall we call it art, of pitching?
I think there's a kind of different power and balance when a brand contacts you, because you're still not 100% guaranteed to get that campaign, even though it's really exciting when you get that email land in your inbox. So like Bettina said, as soon as possible, I try to get on a call and really use that as an opportunity for them to get to know my personality and pitch my creative ideas. I feel like that's when I've had the most success. But in terms of when you're outreaching to brands, I think there is literally no one else like you. It's really important to convey your unique selling points, like what you can bring to the table that no one else can have, whether it's like a certain skill set that you have, maybe it's the type of photography that you do, or like a certain way of doing videos on your reels. I try to convey this in my media kit. I use a combination of a PDF media kit and also Kitly, which I feel like really helps sell my value in terms of analytics. I think I always have to take time to educate brands as well, because so many brands are obsessed with follow accounts, but really sharing stuff like engagement rate, saves, and the true reach of your post is really important. So that's what I use Kitly for. So yeah, all those kind of things come into together when pitching. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you so much. And now I just want to reset a couple of things. So I hope we give you enough food for thought. I see a lot of people actually started thinking about maybe the way they approach brands they love. So I really hope we kind of started that. Now, we got loads of questions already, which is really exciting. So I'm sweeping through a bit. Before I jump into some of those, some questions from the audience, because I think they segue really well into the element of actually presenting some of your work, because that's one question that came up a lot. I just wanted to say as well, I'll put it in the chat too. So you are learning so much and you're sharing so much, guys, but I also want you to share your best takeaways with us. How you can do that, you just make sure that you head on your stories after this and share your best lesson, extra brownie points if you even share it, who was the speaker, and you tag them as well. If you tag Kitly and Creative Impact so that we can keep track of that, you can win a copy of our partnership and sponsorship bundle, as well as a free year of the Kitly Publisher subscription, which is great because it gives you that idea and it allows you to collaborate through the app by accessing all of their features. So all you have to do is just think about the best lesson from this chat. Just if you're watching live, obviously, tag us at Creative Impact Co and Kitly app, and even tag our lovely speakers. That is extra brownie points. And then we're going to give you 24 hours, and then one of you will win a copy of our bundle, as well as a free yearly subscription of the publisher for Kitly. Now, going back actually to Kitly, just to give you guys some context, because Kelsey mentioned them as well, obviously, we're doing this together. And the reason why we're doing this together is because Kitly is probably the best tool out there. It looks nice, it feels nice, and it's really about helping you manage collaborations. So it's a media kit, but it goes beyond that because it also helps you manage and work on your collaborations, from the connections to the communication, all the way to even elements of invoicing and kind of sharing those rates as well. So it's something that a lot of people ask questions about, and I spotted a couple in here in the chat as well. So I thought I'll ask us one of those too. So there's a couple of questions about PR, but these are a bit more in depth. I just wanted to ask you one thing that a lot of beginners struggle with, which is actually, how do you think about determining your rates? Somebody asking here, and how do you justify them when a brand is pushing you back? So I don't know if anybody else has something to answer about this. As I said, if anybody has something to think about, you can raise your hand in Zoom, and then I'll let you guys chat as well. I might start with Bettina first, and then if anybody else has something to say. But yeah, how do you go about determining your rates for the first time, or maybe starting understanding where you're at, and how do you justify them to brands when they maybe push back?
For the first time?
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Let's maybe say even like updating your rates, so maybe reevaluating them. Let's do that.
Yes.
Let's go for that one.
Good question. I think when you start working with brands, often they give you a suggestion of what they've got available as budget. And I guess that's a good sort of starting point if you have PR companies that do that. And then, because I guess they look at your following and can give you a suggestion of a ballpark suggestion. Also talking to people that are in the same industry. I think that's what I did in the beginning. I have a lot of friends that do the same thing, and we chat and talk about, you know, how much people charge, and you kind of figure it out. I think it's really important to charge what you're worth, because what happens is if you undercharge, it affects everyone else, and it's a domino effect. And also to sort of value your work. I mean, we've talked about this, Fab. It's you can't pay your rent with a bag of tea. In terms of you can't pay for stuff with product. It's a great sort of, yeah, you have to figure out what you're willing to do, and also figure out what your worth is, and also how long it's going to take you to create the content. It completely depends. If it's going to take you a whole day to create a recipe that you have to test several times, and then you have to take several images and do several setups, and it's going to take you time to edit those, that's a full day of work. So you've got to figure out what that is worth from a monetary point of view. And that is kind of how you find your rate, and that goes up when you sort of climb up the social media ladder, and the more people you work with and the more brands you work with, the more experience you get. Yeah, I don't know if this is very helpful, but you've got to figure out, I think from a time perspective, it's good to figure out how long it's going to take you to create that content and what that is worth to you.
Excellent. I love that. Actually, Kelsey wrote in the chat, product isn't payment, which I agree. As we said, as I said, literally, Bettina and I, during one of the podcasts that we recorded in the past, we did mention about all the things that are awesome, but they don't pay your rent. I wanted to ask you, actually, if I can jump onto Kelsey, just not related, but kind of related to this. Another great question here was, what would be a tip for you that maybe to turning a one-off gift, which we mentioned a few times, from a brand into a working relationship? I'm just going to ask Kelsey for this one, maybe if you have some ideas, and obviously afterwards, if anybody else wants to raise their hand from the panelists, you can jump on as well.
Yeah, so if you've started off an organic relationship with a brand and you have kind of accepted a free product in return for an Instagram story, a perfect way to kind of follow that up and then possibly turn that into a paid collaboration is just kind of following up with that brand or PR directly, showing them examples of what, piece of content you created with that product, and then just simply saying I really love this product. I had a really good response from my followers. Here's some examples of some DMs I received or some click-throughs. Just show as much data as you can. And then just say, I would love to work together in the future. Please keep me in mind, when you have budget available. It's that simple. And some brands just simply do not have budget available. So, you can still keep in touch. But at the end of the day, you just got to make your intentions clear and then keep those lines of communication open.
Amazing. I love that. There's another question similar to this, just to kind of on the back of this. When you work for a brand the first time on a paid basis, how do you, I guess, raise your rates then time after that? If you want to raise your rates at some point working with the same brand, does anybody have any tips on that? Nicole, I saw you nodding, so maybe I don't know if you want to take out on this one, because I think it kind of follows up from that first relationship and then the next step.
Yeah, I think I think it ties in actually quite nicely with the first question about rates that Bettina was answering, and I think it really helps to take some time to figure out to know yourself and know your brand really well. I think that's my biggest piece of advice, because as we all know, I think the social media landscape changes so quickly. And, you could be pivoting as well. You could be focusing more on TikTok, or you could be focusing more on creating reels. The types of content you create is changing. The types of content that brands are asking for is changing. So all of those things need to come into consideration when it comes to setting your rates, whatever they may be, or raising them. And that's the thing. I think that we're never going to lower our rates in the same way that no one has ever got, their budgets may get smaller, but the work only gets more on our side. So that's, again, that's not anything to feel ashamed of. And I think when you know what it is that you're offering, again, to your audience, what you know, what it is that you can create, again, like if you're an incredible photographer or videographer, an editor, you are a brilliant writer or a podcaster or whatever that is all valuable. And you should take those things into consideration when you are setting those rates and charging people. So yeah, so don't feel as though, again, you need to do a lot of explanation. I think a lot of those things really speak for themselves, and your content is likely to speak for itself. And you can just point to that. I think it's really simple for brands to see, you know, an incredible piece of work that you've created, an incredible piece of work that they themselves might want to use on their socials, or, you know, on their website, or use as an ad themselves that they want to push out or whitelist or whatever it might be. So it's being knowledgeable in that sense as well, of all the different ways that your content can be used, and lean into that. Don't be afraid or be ashamed of it.
I love that. Thank you so much. And again, it really reminds us of all the different steps that we're going to take. Amy, what would you like to add to that? See, she used the raise your hand. Well done, Amy. You might have to unmute yourself, but yeah.
It didn't pop up like that. No, I loved what Nicole was saying. And it's also having that confidence to say my rates have gone up and give a brief explanation, but not explain yourself too much. Like these are your rates and you stand by them. But in the same sense, you've got to be willing to lose them if they say, no, we can't pay you more. Like, are you willing to turn away from them and say, well, no, you can't pay my new higher rate, so I'm going to have to say no on this occasion. So it's really balancing out, can you afford to lose them if they can't increase it, just because you need to respect yourself and also respect the rate that other brands are paying you. Yeah, so just really think about, can you lose them as a client if they're not willing to raise it, but just be confident in your ability as well.
Actually, Amy, I love that point. I'm going to just stay on you because there's a point here that was made, another question that is kind of on something you mentioned before, which I think is really important when it comes to communication in general. How do you keep in touch with brands, even when you don't want to maybe like just keeping in touch without sounding that you maybe are looking proactively for more work and opportunities? I guess, what is the balance between doing that and just wanting to keep in touch with them?
I think social media is great here, so you don't need to always be sending them emails to say, hi, I'm still here, do you have anything? Just be active on their socials, like comment on their posts, like if you like what they're posting, say that you do, reply to their stories, just so you're kind of always in their mind. Like obviously you don't need to go overboard, but every now and then just comment, and not in a way that you're selling yourself, but it just keeps you in their mind. So yeah, just be really friendly. I mean, I have brands that I'm literally DMing every single day, and it's not about working together at all. It's just because we're talking about cake or something, because you're just building that relationship on the side. So just be yourself, but just make sure you're getting noticed by commenting on their posts and their stories.
I love that. Thank you. By the way, guys, thank you for the questions. I also want to say, because everybody's just showering us with questions, so I'm doing my best to kind of also keep track of them, and making sure that we're kind of following that step as well. There is a couple of questions on this ilk, and I love this, like a bit of a like powwow also in the chat. Like everybody's like, oh, I got 2,000 followers. What should I do? I got 5,000. Charge, girl. Charge it, dude. Let's go for it. And it's actually a question that has been asked in a few ways. So I'm going to kind of like tap onto this kind of from both of the people that asked, which is really about kind of how do you get brand deals, or how do you approach brands when your numbers, and your followers are not that high. So the questions are as such: what should you focus on for metrics? And I love, because Kelsey mentioned about actually trying to educate brands. And I think that's a big thing about followers is not the only thing you should look at. But also, I guess, how do you justify, that payment if you feel like your followers are not enough? And or what metrics would you focus on instead? I'm pretty sure everybody has potentially like a little like nuggets here. So I don't know if anybody wants to give us maybe one little thing. So we do a bit of a roundup for this one, because I know a lot of people ask this question. Maybe starting with Bettina again. Just what are your thoughts on, are they too small to charge, or what other metrics can you focus on if not the followers?
I mean, all your metrics, how many people comment on your posts, what type of reach you have, all of those metrics matter. And also, if you've got a small following, you're a micro influencer, and you've still got reach. Even if it's 2,000 or 5,000 followers, that's still 2,000 people that follow you that will directly be notified or see your post. So I don't think it matters if you've got 2,000 followers or 100,000 followers. You've still got people that follow you for your opinion or for your lifestyle or for the products that you potentially use. So I just say go for it and use your other metrics to your advantage.
I love that. Nicole, what about yourself? I think there's a lot here to unpack as well from what Bettina mentioned, but I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, totally. I noticed that comment, and that's why I dove in and I said I started getting paid work when I had 2,000 followers. And again, I think there's a real misconception about, how much content creators get paid. Don't get me wrong, I think a lot of people can get paid and get paid very well. I'm not saying, I was making millions when I had, nor am I making millions now, but it's possible. And again, it's about so many things. It's about what you talk about, your niche, and the content pillars that you might have. It's about, like Bettina was saying, knowing your metrics inside and out, and how valuable things like your true reach or your saves and shares are, what kind of conversations you're having with your audience. Again, you'll know those things because people will be in your DMs talking about those things with you. And absolutely, being a micro influencer is so valuable. Again, just in the way that we are all creating content now, and how people, how brands utilize that content. If they want to use that content for themselves, that's something that you deserve to be paid for. And so, yeah, so maybe they might not. Maybe they have a higher reach than you, and that's great. They can pay you to create the content for them that they can then use, and that's a transaction that is useful to you again, and that gets you seen by their audience. It's a win-win for everybody. So don't be concerned at all about your follower count. It's completely meaningless in my mind. It takes a lot of education, I think, around this, but I feel like we're getting there.
I agree, and I cannot stress it enough. It's really that educational piece that it's beneficial for everyone, I think, as well. And it has an element of repetition. Repetition is the mother of skills. So don't be afraid to say, actually, these are some of the other things that I can bring to the table. These are some of the other engagement and interactions that I've had. Kelsey, actually, within this question, I wanted to ask you also, maybe if there's any metrics or any ways that also Kitly helps you with that, because I know that metrics is a big thing about the media kit they provide. And I was wondering whether there's some connection also in that you can think of.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is focusing on reach, because on my interiors account, for example, I've got 80,000 followers, but on average, I actually reach 100,000 followers per post, sometimes even up to 300 or 400,000. And speaking to like the wider community, I mean, we've got a thread in Creative Girl Gang where we've discussed what everyone's average reach is. And if you actually look at the numbers, the average reach compared to follow count is around 30%. So if you're actually reaching higher than that, then you're already in a good position. I think it's going to take a while for the industry to catch up on this, but if you're ahead of the curve and you actually take the time to educate brands on this, that's what can really land you more paid collaboration. So I honestly really wouldn't worry about follower count. Even at my main account with 150,000 followers, I still get told by brands that there's no budget. So it doesn't matter about follower count. It's more about, your unique selling point, your unique relationship with your followers. And I do find like the less you accept, free product in return for posts, you'll have more time to create that organic content that actually serves your followers, and that will in turn attract paid opportunities. I can't stress that enough. The more you have more time to create organic content for your followers, it will bring back to you tenfold. So I would really focus on that.
And sometimes we tend to forget that, and it's hard. There's so many things that we have to do, but again, you're really serving your followers first, and then everything else will follow. So thank you for reminding us of that, because that's so key. Amy, last but not least, anything else that comes from you as well your way?
feel like everyone's covered it, but I love what Nicole was saying about how the brand or the PR agency can then use your content as well. So even if you don't have a really big following, if your content is amazing, and ultimately that's what sells, like if your content is incredible, they will pay for that no matter how many followers you have, because they might want to use it. Well, they will want to use it, and they can use that as marketing for anywhere. So just keep that in mind, and don't feel disheartened, or I mean, embarrassed isn't the wrong word, but like everyone starts from somewhere. We all started with 0 followers, and we're all on this journey, and we're all growing or we're shrinking, but everyone's in this together. So I think the more we can be supportive and don't get too bogged down in the numbers, and just do it because you love it and show off your passion as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. Again, loads of questions. I just want you to know that we're going to try to do our best to answer. I'm also going to keep an eye out, and we'll try to maybe type some answers if we can too. But for now, we're trying to focus as much as possible onto the pitching and obviously landing the collaborations. Some of the other stuff, we just might need to do another webinar. What can I say? Because there's loads of different pointers. And again, we're all at different journeys of our growth. So, you know, some of the stuff can also be relevant to how do you grow your account. And again, we're going to try and cover as much as we can. So don't you worry. Before I jump into another question that I really found interesting as well, which is kind of a couple of people talking about PR, so I'll just circle to that one next. I remind you guys, if you have an amazing takeaway lesson that really stuck with you, please share it on the stories. I'll put it in the chat as well. Just tag both us and Kitly, and tomorrow we will choose a winner that wins our partnership and sponsorship bundle, as well as a free year of Kitly Publisher subscription. So double yay to that. Now, there's a couple of questions about PR. I'm going to try and round it up to one. Let me just find them again. There's just so many. One was, how do you find PR company emails? But I would say, how do you find emails sometimes if you want to approach a brand? And sorry, let me see the other one as well. And also, how is it the best way to keep in touch with PR emails? I would say for the PR teams, is kind of similar to what Amy mentioned, probably also about keeping in touch with brands as well, is thinking about ways to connect with them. But that could be a follow-up question. But I think it's kind of like, how do we find the right contacts for people if we want to approach PR or even brands? How do we find the brands and PRs we want to reach out to? I'm going to ask first, Amy, obviously, if anybody else has any idea, maybe raise your hands. But Amy, I know that you've been doing a bit of work with that, or maybe like kind of finding brands that you love or PRs. Is it mostly people coming to you, or do you also find some ways to kind of find the right contacts for yourself?
Fortunately, nowadays, I feel like it's more them approaching me. But I can remember at the start, I would spend all weekend, have a list of companies I wanted to contact, and having a template really helped, but making every message you send personal. So it's not copy and pasted, because it's the same when you receive an email that they've literally just changed your name and it's not personal, it hasn't got anything about you. It immediately puts your back up, and you don't really want to work with them because they feel like they're not even bothering. It's like when they put Dear Nourishing Amy, I think they know my name is not Nourishing Amy. So at least they could have done is change that. So yeah, just spend some time thinking about the brands you'd love to work with. Make a list. If you want to use a spreadsheet, like Nicole and some other people use a spreadsheet, or make a list. I love a to-do list and ticking it off about all the brands that you want to work with. And I would start by maybe just Instagramming them and just say, this is who I am, this is what I would love to do, is there someone I can email? And they're just following it up if they haven't messaged you. But yeah, Instagram's a great place to start. Or I think, as Kelsey was saying, like loads of websites have their contact emails on there, but they can just come across a bit cold, and they might just go to the hello at kind of website, which isn't always the best place. So if you haven't heard from someone, just follow up, whether that's by email or by Instagram. Just, I mean, after like 5 times, if they haven't replied, that might be the time to kind of move on. But just if you really are passionate about it, keep going and keep messaging them.
Thank you so much. I just want to say something that Nicole wrote as well. LinkedIn can also be really helpful, I guess. Can you tell us what you do there? Do you actually look at the names and then guess? Do you message them on LinkedIn? What do you do when it comes to it? Because people don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've 100% done like the reverse, like email looking up on Google and like trying to figure out people's names, obviously via LinkedIn. And then usually, like everyone's saying, if you go to Instagram, they will have an email connected to their Instagram account anyway. Sometimes it's a social email, sometimes it's a PR email. Sometimes it's a person, you really just don't know, but definitely check. and at least then you can get it to see what the actual format of the email is. And that's really helpful. So, or even on the brand website, the emails are there for the PRs a lot of the times. It really just depends. But yeah, starting with LinkedIn is when I just try to find out people's names and if people are still working there, things like that. It's not 100% foolproof, but it definitely helps. It gives you a place to start, and it makes you feel a bit more comfortable. I don't message through LinkedIn because yeah, I don't really, it seems like a bit of a strange way to talk about doing influencer work or content creation via there, but that's that tool. Yeah, Hunter, that's what I've used before. I couldn't remember the name of it, but that's really, those are the things that have helped me.
Love it. Everybody's gonna now like bookmark Hunter and just making sure they check it out later. Thank you so much, guys. I have one question that maybe, I don't know, because Bettina, obviously you mentioned before, like, calling brands potentially having like a longer chat. And actually there's a very important question that I think comes here when it comes to pitching brands and landing collaborations, is also obviously coming up with ideas with them, right? And somebody asked, I have a fear of having phone calls with brands because they possibly will move on with your idea without you. I've heard of this happening before, but I'm a new creator. I'm afraid of this. How do you mitigate this? Obviously, anybody else, if you want to raise your hand, but I was wondering, again, maybe like starting with Bettina, if you have any ideas on this, because I know that can be something like, how do I protect myself in my work as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the initial phone call and talking with brands, you don't need to give them your recipe ideas. I mean, if you already have content on your feed, you can sort of give them an idea of what type of content you would like to produce, but you don't have to, you don't have to give them the whole package. You can just sort of scratch the surface. So I wouldn't recommend sending them, including the recipes in the pitch. The pitch is for the content itself, saying, for example, I would like to do 3 recipes for you and they're savory or sweet. So don't give everything away. Because yes, I guess there's a risk of them taking those ideas and not working with you. Sorry, that's my doorbell. Fantastic. This is my bedroom. So yeah, I think no, there's ways of getting around that. Don't give them everything. You can give them a pitch and you can just give them an idea of what type of content you would like to create for them. I think fear is one of those things that I would, don't be fearful of doing things, because the only way that you learn is by making mistakes. So don't do stuff, or don't go out and not do stuff because you're fearful that you will not succeed, or that somebody's going to say no, or that's how you learn. So I've sort of gone through many years of saying yes to so many things and then figuring out, right, I don't want to do that again, or that was really fun, I definitely want to go down this road more. So just go out and do it, learn from your mistakes, talk to people in your industry. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And again, it's the fear can actually stop us sometimes, and I appreciate that, but I agree, like, you just have to be a bit smart and maybe be conscious that is something that you're worried about, and think about how you're going to approach it for yourself. So that's key, because it could happen with an email, with a phone call. It's really about how you put yourself out there. I want to answer super quickly a question that I saw 15 times. So I'm going to give you a quick thing. It's not related 100% to this, but I want to give you just a little tip, because a lot of people were asking about licensing and should I charge if somebody uses my picture? What do I do? Do I put people off if I say that? This goes back to the probably step after you land your collaboration. Yippee! Celebrate. After that, contracts and agreements. If you have an agreement, then if it's not in the agreement and they're using on your website and using it even for ads, even worse, then they should be paying you, because if not, it is illegal. If it's not in the agreement, then again, that can be a big contingency. I would say definitely ask somebody if you feel strongly about it, because it can get into kind of like a bit of a legal ground, there's something that can be done. And I'm sure the ladies also will have something to say about this. But again, it's probably a different conversation. But I want to say the best thing to do is to have an agreement. If not, you can still ask them to put it down because you didn't agree to it, especially if it's a free product, even more so. Somebody asked, would it put the brand off if I say that? Maybe so. But is your right to make sure that people don't use things without your permission? So if it puts them off, then it's not your fault at all. So that's what I would say regardless. But if you have this issue or you're confused about it, remember, if it's gifted, without any sort of like permission or without asking, that you can ask them to put it down. If it's not in the agreement, make sure that your agreements have something about that. What can they use and how can they use it? If it's in the agreement, then you don't even have to think about it. The agreement says they have to ask you, pay you, you choose, then it's fine. But it can be something really big for a lot of us because we're visual creators. So think about it. I just wanted to briefly mention it because a few people asked, but again, it's not fully relevant. So just sweeping through this one. A couple of people asked about ghosting, like in different ways. Like if it's a brand that I talked to before and they never replied, or if it's a PR agency that I started talking to and then they ghost me, what should I do? Kelsey, what about, again, maybe contacting people they went cold, or maybe recontacting people or try and follow up with them? Have you got any tips on this note? Because I know that it can happen, especially when you get excited about a project and then it goes cold. What do we do?
I think it's important to not take it personally because most people who work in PR have a million things going on at one time. So I do recommend try being persistent. Don't take it personally. Sometimes even when I've had like a contract signed, it might take a few weeks for me to get a price agreed on. And that's because at some companies there's like different levels of approval they have to go through. So don't worry too much. They don't get back to you in a few days or even weeks. Especially if they've already had like a phone conversation. So I would say just be persistent. There's been cases where I've followed up maybe, I think like 5 is my limit, because then I feel like I'm being a bit desperate. But honestly, sometimes some people are just a bit of a scatterbrain like myself. So they just need a bit of a gentle reminder, and just say like, I think it just, if anything, shows you enthusiasm. So I don't think it's a bad thing to be following up. Don't take it personally is all I can say.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to do one last question, which is something that actually we're going to ask anyway, but it's tied in with something that a couple of people asked about media kits and that kind of first kind of pitch email. So that little, whether it's a PDF, again, we talked about Kitly. So even if you send the Kitly link, that will have your rates, by the way, so that can definitely help. But what would be your top tip when it comes to, again, sharing that media kit, almost that little proposal that you send to people? We're going to go again for everyone. So we're going to ask it to everyone. And obviously, as I said, if you do want to find a way to get everything in one place, I will recommend checking Kitly. I'll make sure that Chanel, who is listening, pops down for me the link to Kitly so you can check out, obviously, the app and download it for yourself. But yeah, what are your thoughts when it comes to this? Because it's a really powerful tool to get that conversation starting, to get an understanding of what can you provide. Amy, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the first pitch and email with the media kit and kind of presenting that?
Okay, so it might be quite bad, but I don't have a media kit. But I know, but like Bettina said, it's because I want to be super flexible, and I have a template of an email that I send, and it says kind of 2 or 3 options that I tend to, the 3 ways that I work with brands, whether it's like paid for sponsored post, content creation, or something else. And it'll just have like very basic information. And then I'll say, but I really want to discuss this with you based on your budget, what you're looking for, and then we can work out something that works together. And then if they've contacted me, they tend to know who I am, or they've seen my work anyway, but then the conversation will go from there. So I'll kind of say, this is an example of my latest reels, this is something we could do, or this is an example of my latest sponsored post, this could be similar. So I don't have a media kit in that sense, and maybe I should get one, but it hasn't caused me any harm. Even if like loads of PR people say, oh, send us your media kit, I just send that really lovely first email that kind of says, I really want to work out something that works for both of us. So let me know your ideas, because I just think sometimes a media could be a bit too rigid, because maybe what they want isn't actually in your media kit, and that puts them off. So I think that's my reasoning behind not having a media kit. It's something I thought about doing, but just haven't. But yeah, so that's not necessarily the right way of doing it, but that's just how it's worked for me.
I love that you still provided us with some tips on what you would focus on in that first email, which is still very beneficial. Whichever format you use is still that first impression, which is key. Kelsey, what about yourself?
So I find when a brand has come to me, that's kind of a clear indication that they love my style and my work. But what they can't see is those kind of, nitty-gritty statistics and data. So that's why I like to have my Kitly Media Kit, because I don't have to worry about updating it. It uses live data, so it automatically updates with my follower count, my audience demographics, my reach, my engagement rate. And that way the brand can actually determine like how much value I have. So it's just like a little URL that you can pop in the body of your email. So I make sure it's just always in there. And it's just something that's like, it's always in the background. I don't have to worry about it. But then I also have a PDF media kit that's more so for me. I'm a graphic designer. Like I like to show off my photography and have a bit of a like brand messaging and, include things that you can't always convey through like bar graphs and data statistic like that. So yeah, a bit of a combo, but I think it's really important. I don't include my rates because I like to always ask for a brief first. And I feel like if you give every rates, there's no room for negotiation. So I think that's always like something to come in a later part of the conversation. So yeah, I don't have my rates on my media kit.
Again, it goes back to what Bettina mentioned. So thank you for reiterating that. It really opens up a different conversation. So it's something to think about depending on what your goals are and how you want to go about it. That's an excellent point as well. Thank you, Kelsey. Nicole, what about yourself?
Right. So yeah, I haven't used a media kit for the last, I would say maybe like the last year, since I signed to a management company. So they handle a lot of the negotiations for me. But because I started doing my podcast and I've been pitching for sponsorship for that specifically, it has meant, creating a media kit and a pitch deck that I feel like follows a lot of the same sort of principles. So there's a lot of obviously really traditional back-end data within that in terms of like who listens and where do they live and all of that stuff, which is relevant for any brand. But also again, because my podcast is around mixed race identity, so it's very interpersonal, it's very conversational. So a lot of the feedback that we get, again, comments and things are very emotive. So those screenshots of feedback from listeners is so invaluable, and again is really helping when it comes to sponsorships that we've landed for the podcast this year. So it's always helpful to again use I find using a combination of the numbers and really getting into the nitty gritty of what your data looks like, as well as that real personal connection. That's always really worked well for me. So yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you. And again, it reminds us that depending on your stage, you might have other people as well coming into the mix. By the way, one thing, I also love the idea of a pitching deck because it's quite powerful and it combines the media kit with something a bit more tailored. So excellent. Bettina, last but not least, what about yourself?
So I've got a media kit. I've got a media kit that's priced and a media kit that's not priced. And I use it for statistics and also to put brands that I've worked with in the past. It's almost like a little bit of a CV. So as and when I work with brands, I add those to the PDF, and just include different things that I've done. And yeah, depending on the brand or the PR company that I'm working with, I usually send out the one that doesn't have a price list on. But also some companies, I find they want a price list straight away, as in a media kit with a price range, and it's a yes or a no very quickly. So yeah, that's why I keep both options there.
It does keep your options open, so I think it's quite, it's quite a powerful way as well. It's really smart. Ladies, first of all, I want to say thank you. So if you want to give us a little love in the chat and say thanks to all the gorgeous ladies, we have had triple round of handles for everyone. So in case you missed them, the first, second, 15th time, now you can check them again. We did our best to answer as much as possible. Obviously, some of the questions have not been answered because there were so many, but I took note and we'll make sure that we will cover some of the other topics in new webinars. So keep an eye out for more collaborations with us and the lovely team at Kitley. Ladies, thank you so much for taking the time. Massively appreciate you all, both old and new friends. Thank you for your wisdom as well. I really hope that everyone feels a bit more confident about taking that next step that they want to take. If you want to find out more about everyone, remember, just check out the links that we put in there and also enter the giveaway. Share your top tip and lesson and share the love with the panelists. They spend so much time to share their wisdom. Guys, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, team. See you all next time. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.